It all begins in the not too distant past with a terrible war full of death and bloodshed. The terrible conflict became known to all as the Great War between justice and demons. And it all finally ended when the terrible celestial demon was defeated by the legendary immortal fighter. The legendary technique left behind by this warrior was called the Bright Eye Fist, but the children thought the name was rather weak. The children ask if the master really learned this legendary technique, and he assures them that he did, without a doubt. But his son doesn't believe a word and grumbles suspiciously, saying that his father is actually lying. The master then clenches his fist with great pride and assures that this secret technique makes him completely invincible. The son complains, saying that he is just bluffing while the other students are having fun with the situation. The young man then questions whether everything his father says is true or not, as it wouldn't make sense. He is living in a very small and isolated dojo in the middle of nowhere, just teaching young children. The father starts laughing heartily and replies to his irritated son that it all makes perfect sense. He explains that those fists are invincible and that all the little disciples are very adorable. The master even praises his own kind-hearted son, which irritates the boy because of his father's low tone of voice. Laughing heartily, the proud master asks what more he could want from life besides all that peace. However, all their tranquility is interrupted by a terrible moment of pure despair. The boy watches in shock as his once powerful father falls, completely defeated right before his eyes. The man starts coughing up a lot of blood, while the floor of the place becomes completely stained. But he continues to stand imposingly, even with several swords embedded in his own body. The master soon realizes that they used an extinct poisonous grass to weaken his body. He looks at the entrance and realizes that the great traitors are actually his former disciples. The first traitorous disciple who appears before him is introduced as Jin-am. Soon after, the second traitorous disciple, named Juk-yeon, appears. The third traitorous disciple accompanying the group is the sinister Yuk-won. And finally, the fourth traitor of the group who emerges from the shadows is called Wong-pei. The master screams in pain and asks if they coveted that power so much that they would betray their own master. The leader of the traitors becomes extremely furious upon hearing the mention of the deceased immortal warrior. The wounded man smiles and warns that they will never have that power because it has already been passed on. The traitors are completely desperate and enraged by that unexpected revelation from the master. The father looks at his hidden son and apologizes for showing such a weak side right at the end of his life, but he decides he will leave one last great lesson for the young man and prepares for the worst. He tells the boy to pay close attention to every movement and detail of what he will do next. The hero clenches his fist with all the strength remaining in his body for the final attack, and he prepares the most devastating blow of his entire life against the traitors present there, shouting with determination that this would be his great and final lesson for his beloved son. The traitors are desperate and order all the warriors to attack at once to stop him in time. The leader shouts angrily, demanding that the man hand over that absolute power by any means necessary. The master's fist glows intensely as he gathers an immense amount of energy. The entire landscape around the mountains falls completely silent for a brief moment of tension, until a gigantic explosion of light consumes the entire mountainous region, destroying everything around it. The very frightened bull calls out for his father amidst the wreckage left after the attack. The badly injured father admits that the story about his invincibility might have just been a bluff, but he asks with a slight smile if his son managed to see the power of the attack for real. He assures the young man that this was his real fist and that he was indeed invincible. The dying man reveals the true name of that legendary technique while holding an ancient book. This is the secret of the limitless fist, and he hands the sacred book to the young man so he can give his own name. He trusts in the succession of the technique and says he knows his son will be able to protect it from any threat. The father says his last words, telling Jin-gwon to find his own fist before disappearing. The young man is left completely alone, keeping the secret manual hidden in his clothes, burdened by the weight of the inheritance. Far away, one of the traitors is grinding his teeth with rage at the final outcome of that invasion. They admit they would have died in the explosion if it weren't for the quick escape technique of one of the members. The traitors spit blood, shocked by the terrible damage that even the wind of that blow caused them. The leader coldly orders that they find and kill all the remaining disciples, and also the master's son. He somberly justifies that it is necessary to uproot evil so as not to leave any trace. Meanwhile, the young man flees desperately through the forest, clutching tightly his deceased father's manual. He runs non-stop through the trees, trying to get as far away as possible from any danger. Hidden deep in the mountains, he trained his straight punch like crazy for 10 long years. And finally, at the age of 20, the boy managed to achieve the great strength he so desired. He finally achieved enlightenment and unleashed his own fist, destroying an entire canyon. He clenches his fist with determination and informs his deceased father that the great moment of the journey has arrived. At 20 years old, Jin-gwon smiles, knowing he is finally ready to have his revenge. But the world he returned to after 10 years of isolation was completely different from before. The young man is completely confused as he looks around and no longer recognizes anything from that old place. He sees people dressed in modern armor and strange clothes talking about guild interviews. He is shocked, not understanding what is happening, and realizes that this seems like a completely different world. The boy follows the girl dressed as a witch with his eyes, unable to fully process the scene. He begins to wonder if things have really changed that much just because he's been away from it all for 10 years. He stares with considerable curiosity at the short clothes that young women are wearing these days. With a forced smile on his face, he thinks that perhaps the world has improved considerably in that time. But then he focuses on what's important and remembers that the training village should be located right there. Looking down from the mountaintop, he sees a gigantic, modern city filled with enormous buildings. The boy is speechless when he realizes that the whole world has actually changed completely in the time he was away. He decides to stop an old man on the road to ask what might have happened to that old village. The old man laughs heartily upon hearing the question and asks if the young man has lived isolated in the mountains his whole life. The old man asks if he has ever heard of the terrible portal conflict that happened 10 years ago. The gentleman patiently begins to explain that it all started with the appearance of a giant hole right in the sky. From that strange portal in the sky, a mysterious and frightening energy began to spread throughout the world. The animals and plants affected by this energy transformed into terrifying, violent, mutant monsters. Soon after, mysterious beings from another world appeared, called hunters, and these invaders began to mercilessly attack all the people and warriors in the region. Their strength was so immense that even an ordinary hunter could easily defeat great martial artists. Almost all the warriors died, and when all seemed lost, an unexpected salvation arose. The 4 former disciples of the immortal hero appeared on the battlefield as saviors of humanity. They emerged at the most critical moment of all and began to defeat the invading hunters in their tracks. Over time, many ordinary people around the world also began to awaken hunter powers. And after much fighting, the leader of the hunters proposed a peace agreement, putting a definitive end to the Great War. The old man concludes by saying that they now live in an era of skills that are far superior to the old martial arts. The boy becomes thoughtful upon hearing that his father's murderers are now considered the greatest heroes in the world. The old man leaves grumbling and telling the young man to read some newspaper to catch up on current events. Jin-gwon becomes extremely serious when he realizes the irony of the whole absurd situation he has just discovered. The greatest traitors are now considered saviors, and suddenly he ends up bumping into someone on the street. A young woman with blue hair quickly apologizes while the boy says it's okay and that it was nothing. He looks a little awkward at the girl's short clothes as he watches her run away. the boy decides to go to an inn to get more information and looks for his coins hidden in his clothes. Suddenly, he realizes with utter astonishment that his coins have completely disappeared from his clothes, and he panics completely when he notices that even his father's secret manual has disappeared from his clothes. The boy's eyes widen as he realizes he's just been robbed by that girl without even noticing. The blue-haired girl runs happily holding the old book, thinking it was a valuable family treasure. She complains about the bad smell of the old book and is revealed to be the Class D thief hunter named Alice. Suddenly, a mysterious voice emerges behind her, drawing her attention and frightening the girl. Jin-gwon appears imposingly from above, saying that the book is more valuable than life itself. The blue-haired girl asks in shock how he found her, and the young man says he simply followed her energy. Alice gets quite scared and asks if the young man is some kind of very dangerous dark wizard. Jin-gwon says he doesn't even know what a black magician is and immediately demands that she return all his things. The thief tries to invent a saying to trick him, but the boy moves extremely fast. She realizes how strong he is when she notices how easily he handles her and decides to change tactics immediately. She formally apologizes, returns the belongings, and in a very presumptuous manner asks him to lend her gold. The young man asks what gold is, leaving the thief astonished to notice that he only has some iron coins. Alice starts to fake cry, saying that her younger sister is very sick and needs the money. The boy curiously asks about his sister's illness, and the girl internally celebrates, thinking her trick worked. She explains that a terrible plague has spread through the village, and that only a mysterious healer knows the cure. The thief claims that the doctor now charges exorbitant prices, and even demands that women pay with their bodies. The boy suggests that she work honestly, but she insists that the doctor would abuse her because she is too young. She continues to pretend to cry a lot in an attempt to convince the knave boy with her drama. He eventually agrees and says that it's perfect because he needed to test something very important. The young man assures her that he will resolve the situation and authoritatively demands that she take him directly to the healer. Upon arriving at the location, he notices that there is no smell of medicine, but rather an extremely sinister energy in the air. The boy says seriously that he wants to see for himself how good this doctor really is. Upon opening the door of the establishment, he is confronted by several muscular and very dangerous henchmen staring at him. Jin-gwon realizes he's in the wrong place and humorously tries to turn around and leave. But the treacherous thief takes advantage of the distraction and gives the boy a strong kick in the back, throwing him into the room. She yells angrily, saying that he brought this upon himself by refusing to give her the money she asked for. The thief reveals that this is the infamous Manhwa Guild and that the place is full of dangerous C-class hunters. She asks the thugs to pay a good price for the boy, while the criminals compliment his strong physique. The henchmen jokingly comment that he's perfect for the slave market because he looks like a homeless beggar. The protagonist lowers his head, hiding his face, while a slight smile appears at the corner of his mouth. The smugglers are quite surprised by his reaction and wonder if the young man has lost his mind. The boy confesses that he is relieved to see that even with the changes in the world, human trash remains the same. The giant henchman becomes furious at the boy's insolence and lunges forward with his weapon to teach him a lesson. Protagonist clenches his fist, happy to be able to test his full strength without feeling any guilt. He prepares with determination to deliver his first straight punch with all the power he has accumulated. The opponent looks on with utter disdain, unable to comprehend the simplicity of the boy's direct attack. The secret base where the smuggling guild operates is a large, traditional-style building. Suddenly, a gigantic gust of wind explodes throughout the building, destroying the walls on impact. The thief girl is violently thrown away by the enormous shockwave created by the boy. The ceiling and columns of the place begin to collapse completely, with pieces of wood falling everywhere. The surviving henchmen try to get up, coughing and asking in fear what just happened. The criminal leader is completely paralyzed with terror as he looks at the immense destruction on the wall. Suddenly, one of the accomplices shouts excitedly, claiming that he has finally solved the mystery of that attack. The man assures everyone present that the destruction was the work of a secret skill of the boss. They begin praising the leader, saying that his move was so quick that no one could see it. The leader decides to lie to maintain appearances and pretends that he actually used his legendary level secret skill. Lying on the ground amidst the wreckage, Jin-gwon sighs thoughtfully as he notices a major problem with his fist. The protagonist remembers a crucial detail while observing the guild's completely destroyed ceiling. He recalls the exact moment he threw the punch and realized something extremely dangerous was in his path. At that moment, there were two small children running happily right in the direction of their line of attack. The children were playing, unaware of the deadly danger that was about to befall them because of the fight. The young man realized that if he launched a full-scale attack in that direction, the entire area would be annihilated along with the innocent people. And knowing that after throwing the punch, he couldn't go back, he needed to act very quickly. All he could do in that brief millisecond of pure tension and despair for the innocent, it was about redirecting all the devastating force of the direct attack towards the sky, saving the lives of those children. And so he delivered that powerful and absurd blow, straight up, in an unbelievable way. The terrible shockwave burst through the ceiling of the building, sending a huge cloud of smoke soaring into the sky. The protagonist, lying on the floor, flashes an intrigued smile, realizing how things work now. The henchmen jokingly comment that the beggar must have gone mad and order him to be treated so he can be sold as a slave. Night falls and the moon shines through the iron bars of that cold, dark slave prison cell. The guards and prisoners are sleeping peacefully as silence fills the place. The protagonist lies awake thinking about how to control the absurd strength of his fist so as not to hurt innocent people. He notices someone's presence and formally introduces himself in a friendly manner, revealing that his name is Jin-gwon. Suddenly, a small stone hits the cell bars, drawing the attention of the young man who was in the dark. The young woman with blue hair emerges from the other side of the bars and reveals that her real name is Alice. Jin-gwon eats the rice ball and playfully complains about her selling it for such a cheap price. The girl sighs irritably and asks if he thinks this is the right time to be complaining about the food. She screams in despair, asking why the boy isn't angry since she cruelly deceived him. The protagonist will look at her calmly and ask if her situation has finally been resolved. Alice lowers her head, her hands trembling, and confesses that the story about needing money for her sister is true. She tries to maintain a composed demeanor and says she won't feel guilty at all about what she just did to him. The thief cries with her head down, repeating that in that cruel world, whoever is deceived ends up being the big fool. She trembles with cold and despair, leaning against the railing, while the boy remains completely silent with his back to her. He thinks to himself that although the world has changed a lot, certain things never really change between people. The protagonist says that in any case he helped save her sister and that he already feels satisfied because of that. He turns around with a kind smile, stating that he was the one who volunteered to help in the beginning, and she only asks that she make sure to use all that money to cure her sister's illness. The young man confesses with melancholy that there is no greater regret than failing to protect his own family. Alice blushes deeply at the kindness and shouts, calling him a stupid beggar in an attempt to hide her emotion. Jin-gwon asks her a friendly favor, telling her to keep the book he brought because he will be back to pick it up soon. The young woman accepts with her head down, grumbling that the book stinks and that she won't keep it for long. She warns him not to be late, and soon after we see the slave carriage leaving through the dark forest. The henchmen comment, frightened, that that mysterious forest is scary even during the day. They explain that the illegal base needs to remain isolated to prevent the hunters' association from discovering the crimes, and they tremble at the memory that they are crossing dangerous territory dominated by Class B monsters. Finally, the slave wagon arrives at its final destination, and one of the guards announces the group's entry into the base. The guards start shouting violently, ordering all the prisoners to get off the carriage immediately. They comment on the slaves and highlight that the Manhwa Guild sent a boy who is exceptionally strong and robust. The disgusting slave trader grins greedily, licking his lips, eager to see the new strong merchandise. The thugs continue to aggressively push all the prisoners lined up across the courtyard. The protagonist appears eating giant chicken thighs with both hands, leaving the guards completely confused. Then they start washing his hair very carefully to make the merchandise look presentable. The thugs rub his muscles vigorously, while the boy smiles broadly, enjoying the free shower. Relaxing in a nice hot bath, he happily celebrates having managed to wash away 10 years of dirt from his body. He thinks being a slave doesn't seem so bad, while the other prisoners stare at him, not understanding his reaction. Suddenly, he looks to the side and comes face to face with the same old man he met on the road the day before. The elderly man explains that the work on the road was just a side job and that now he works as a slave washer. He introduces himself as Sit-Jap, Sue because he has 10 different jobs, and the young man says his name is Jin-gwon. The old man sadly warns the boy not to celebrate, for what awaits him next is something cruel. Suddenly, a tall guard appears in an extremely menacing manner, interrupting the two men's conversation. The henchman asks irritably why the strong boy hasn't been branded with a hot iron like the others. He sees the young man picking up his old clothes and angrily questions why he is getting dressed again without permission. Jin-gwon gives an extremely friendly smile and announces that he will forgo the branding with a hot iron on his body. He says his body is sacred and effortlessly begins to break the iron chains that bound him. The guard panics completely when he sees the boy calmly stand up, free of his handcuffs, and start walking. The young man politely thanks everyone for their good work, while a guard tries unsuccessfully to restrain him. The guards panic and order everyone to capture the boy, who runs away from the scene. Meanwhile, the scene changes to the interior of an extremely luxurious mansion, filled with expensive chandeliers. The boy is impressed by the size of the place and realizes that he first needs to find a way out of there. He bumps into the servants who helped him bathe and politely asks if they know the way out. The servants say they are trembling with fear that they know the way out, and the boy suggests they go together, but notices that they are carrying weight. Looking back, he realizes that he is actually dragging a line of guards without making the slightest effort. The young people guide the boy to the main exit, and he remains amazed by the gigantic size of the property. Suddenly, they are interrupted on their way out by a shout warning that it is useless to try to escape from that place. The disgusting slave trader appears laughing victoriously, saying that he had expected that escape attempt. He proudly reveals that he hired a feared Class C hunter to put a definitive end to the fugitives. The self-assured hunter begins to speak with extreme pride about his lineage and his great achievements. But before he could finish speaking, he was brutally crushed by the fist of a gigantic monster. A terrifying wild Class B bear emerges from the trees, destroying the powerful hunter in an instant. Everyone panics completely as they watch the monster tear the warrior apart and realize they are utterly doomed. While everyone runs screaming in terror, the protagonist observes the immense bear, finding its structure quite bizarre. The monster roars furiously to attack him, but the boy can only think about whether young Alice is carefully guarding her book. The scene changes to the night, which shines intensely in the big city, full of colorful lights and modern buildings. Alice walks with her head down through the illuminated streets, a rather sad and dejected expression on her face. She stops in the middle of a dark alley lit by red neon lights, thinking deeply about her actions. The young woman sadly remembers her commitment to bring the medicine to her beloved sister on the same day without fail. Suddenly, a mysterious and very familiar voice emerges from the darkness of the alley, drawing his attention. Jin appears from above and asks about the book, startling the girl, who is shocked to see that he escaped. The young man calmly replies that they simply let him go while we remember the defeated monster. He asks about his sick sister, and suddenly they hear an extremely violent cough coming from inside the house. Alice is in utter despair and throws open the front door of the house, screaming for her older sister in fear. The older sister, coughing heavily, begs her not to strain herself while the younger girl tries to calm her down amidst tears. The boy says he knows the timing is bad but timidly asks where his valuable secret manual might be. The older sister with pink hair notices the boy's presence at the entrance of the house with a sweet and gentle look. She affectionately introduces herself as Yongso, Hai, and apologizes for receiving him lying down due to her poor health. The protagonist narrows his eyes and focuses his attention on the mysterious energy surrounding the beautiful, sick young woman. He senses a mysterious and unpleasant purple aura around her, realizing that it is not martial energy. The young thief starts crying for real and apologizes to the boy not being able to keep their promise. She tearfully reveals that Maha Guild thugs stole all the money for the medicine and also his book. The girl falls to her knees on the floor of the house, crying with deep sadness for having failed her family and friends. We then remember the moment when the guild's loan shark charged absurd interest rates for the previous medicine she bought. The scammer only threw 30 coins to her after deducting exorbitant fees, leaving the girl with almost nothing. The young woman felt completely powerless and humiliated in the face of that immense cruelty on the part of the criminals. She begged on her knees to at least get back her belongings that were on the floor of the place. But the cruel villain replied that things now belonged to him since the boy who owned everything was his prisoner. The thugs laughed heartily at her innocence, calling the girl an idiot for trying to recover her stolen belongings. And the cowardly leader delivered a powerful kick to her, violently ordering the young woman to disappear from there once and for all. He mockingly repeated the cruel phrase that in that world, the one who ends up being deceived is the biggest idiot. The henchman threatened to sell her into slavery, well, if she didn't leave his establishment immediately. And the accomplices laughed disgustingly, suggesting that she sell her own body to pay off the debt. Currently, the young woman is crying profusely, repeatedly saying that she is very sorry for all the bad things that have happened. She laments with deep sorrow in her heart that she was unable to recover the secret manual she promised to keep safe. The protagonist remains in absolute silence, staring at the girl with a very serious and determined expression. Suddenly, the boy places his hand on the young woman's shoulder in a comforting way, calming her desperate heart. He firmly states that even in an unjust world, traitors need to learn the price of their bad actions. He calmly carries So Hai in his arms and tells the two of them to behave better from now on. So Hai gets embarrassed and asks what kind of relationship the young hero has with her younger sister. He carefully lays her down on the bed and replies mysteriously that they have a bit of a history together. He admits that he is also to blame for the young woman, ultimately, being able to buy the medication for herself. The boy assures that he will get the medicine, and the sick sister asks if she can fully trust Alice to his care. The protagonist agrees, touching her affectionately, and asks only for the young woman to make a very important promise. He smiles, urging her to be strong and not succumb to the terrible disease, because he will return as soon as possible. Then the young hero turns excitedly to the frightened Alice and announces that the time has finally come for them to leave. He explains with a confident smile that they will recover all her money and also his precious manual. Alice is confused when she sees the building and asks if they shouldn't go to the hideout of the guys from the Maha Guild. The girl with blue hair points to a discreet door and reveals that this is the real entrance to their base. She explains in whispers that the criminals pretend to be just a normal hunters guild all day long. But the young woman reveals that at night the place transforms into one of the largest, famous of black market betting networks. She hands him a dark cloak to cover his face since they need to be discreet so as not to draw attention there. The two put on hooded cloaks while the thief warns that the most famous gambling game in that place is bizarre. It shows the casino packed with rich gamblers shouting loudly and betting everything they have on that strange game. The girl discreetly points to the center of the hall and announces that the main betting competition is precisely there. Two giant brutes appear exchanging violent slaps, and she explains that the game boils down to a slap fight. The protagonist grimaces in disgust, unable to believe that people bet money on slaps in the face. She says yes, and suddenly a mysterious voice from the shadows asks who they are, startling the pair of intruders. A person wearing a pink skirt appears holding a glass of beer and says that she recognized their familiar voice from afar. The bizarre old man appears in very short woman's clothing offering drinks, and the young man jokes that their fate is horrible. Jin-gwon asks, confused, if the world today no longer has any division between men's and women's clothing. Alice stares at the old man with an expression of pure disgust, while the hero prefers to simply forget about the matter altogether. The old man grumbles about his tiring job and asks to finish explaining how the betting works there. It shows two men standing near a table and explains that the competitors take turns slapping each other. If the man who received the violent blow manages to stay standing on the table, it is his turn to slap back. But if the fighter cannot withstand the impact and falls completely defeated to the ground, he loses the match immediately. The boy understands that the winner takes all the money wagered, and the girl warns him not to even think about entering the game. She earnestly warns that he could end up dying if he isn't careful enough with the power of those slaps. The announcer shouts excitedly, announcing that the Maha Guild Master has knocked out yet another challenger with just a single blow. The mighty Class B champion laughs, challenging anyone brave enough to climb up there and try to win a fortune. The protagonist recognizes the guild master who stole his book, but realizes he needs coins to gamble. He turns to his friends and asks if they have any money saved up, but gives up when he sees their frightened reaction. The old man starts sweating nervously and tries to look away from the boy so he doesn't have to give him any gold coins. The hero places his hand on the old man's shoulder and kindly asks if he hadn't said anything important earlier. Jin-gwon gives a sinister smile, remembering that they were destined for each other, and the old man says that he looks like a terrible mugger. The hero asks him to look closer, claiming to have only the gentle eyes of a young junior asking for help. The old man cries as he hands over his bag of gold and said that this is not theft but rather sponsorship for a bright future. The villain continues shouting arrogantly, telling the audience to bet even their families to fight against him. Suddenly, a large bag of money is thrown into the ring and a voice asks if he can join the betting competition. The protagonist calmly walks to the center, while the announcer excitedly shouts about the arrival of the new challenger. The man recognizes the boy and asks if he is the runaway slave, while the young man asks about his old book. The giant laughs heartily at the boy's audacity, and the announcer timidly asks whose turn it will be to hit first. The champion points to his own face disdainfully and orders the skinny young man to deliver the first slap with all his might. The audience starts laughing loudly, calling the hero a complete idiot for betting all his money and his own body there. Jin-gwon maintains an extremely calm expression while thinking deeply about a way to resolve the situation. He remembers when he almost injured innocent children with the absurdly destructive force of his devastating punch. The young man clenches his fist with determination, thinking about all the training he has done in isolation on the mountain, and he decides that this fight is the perfect opportunity to finally learn to control his immense absolute power. He thinks that the more perfect the shape of the closed fist is when striking, but the force multiplies, and so he decides to make the opposite movement, suddenly opening his hand. The boy delivers an extremely quick and violent downward slap against his opponent. The entire audience around the hall is completely shocked to see the absurd force of his movement. The henchmen at the scene widen their eyes, unable to believe the unbelievable speed of that attack. The fearsome champion falls face first onto the wooden floor, which is completely destroyed by the strong impact. Alice asks, frightened, if that really was just a regular slap, and the protagonist calmly replies that it wasn't. The boy gives a slight smile, explaining that this is actually a new fist technique he created. He reveals that it is the fist of great dispersed energy that serves to control and release all his strength. The young man insists the name is pompous, but everyone around shouts angrily, saying it was just a slap. Jin-gwon asks if he won the contest to claim the cash prize, and the casino announcer stammers in fear. The Manhwa Guild thugs start drawing their swords, yelling for no one to let the boy escape alive. The protagonist smiles happily, remembering that he also needs to ask where they kept all his stolen luggage. The young man raises his open hand, realizing that this situation is perfect for further testing his new skill. He begins to deliver devastating slaps that leave the bandits' faces completely deformed. The boy throws his last opponent to the ceiling and celebrates that he is finally learning to control his strength. Jin-gwon asks his friends if they managed to recover the money and their belongings, and the pair confirm, visibly shaken. Alice blushes deeply and silently realizes that the young man was not actually lying about escaping from the slaves. The boy notices the blue-haired girl's fixed gaze and curiously asks what she is doing standing there. He calls the young woman over with a smile, saying that the time has finally come to go get the medicine for his sister. They arrive in front of a gigantic, traditional medical clinic that leaves the young thief completely impressed. Alice and the old man thank the protagonist wholeheartedly for helping them resolve the problem so fairly. Jin-gwon smiles somewhat awkwardly at all the compliments and tells everyone to go inside the establishment at once to get their medicine. The protagonist pushes open the large wooden door of the clinic to enter, but is met with absolute silence. Suddenly, the boy sniffs the air and becomes extremely serious upon noticing a very strange and familiar odor in the environment. He remembers when his late father used to take horrible medicinal baths and cough a lot from the bad smell. The father said that a real man should endure the stench, while the young man felt unwell near his bathtub, but the master would end up vomiting from the unbearable smell, making his son notice that the two were very similar. The little boy covered his nose and asked why his father insisted on sitting in that stinking cauldron. The master, with a serious look, revealed what his greatest regret was as a legendary martial artist of the world. He explained that he couldn't train his body against all the poisons because of the herb's horrible smell. He admitted that his sense of smell was much more acute than usual, and that's why he couldn't stand that terrible smell. The man ran out of the bathtub, and his son complained about the dirty bathwater, asking why he was doing that. Back in the present, the young man smells the same strong odor and realizes that the clinic is filled with a poisonous fog. The hero's eyes widen as he recognizes the unforgettable aroma of the legendary art of poisons that killed his beloved father. A hooded and mysterious man emerges from the purple mist and comments, surprised to receive visitors so late at night. The man gives a fake smile, asking if they came to buy medicine, and Jin-gwon notices the use of poison techniques. The man pretends to be a kind doctor caring for those suffering from the terrible plague that has spread throughout the region. The gray-haired assistant reports that no one has died, but that the disease has already infected almost everyone in the area. The doctor says that fortunately they have a cure for the plague, as he extends his hand to hand over the special medicine. The man explains that the special medicine is made from 3 sacred and rare ingredients that form a legendary pill. He states that it is a great blessing to be able to create these powerful elixirs even without all the rare ingredients. The doctor hands the bag of pills to the young woman, and the protagonist observes the scene with considerable suspicion in his eyes. Alice holds the precious medicine with both hands and thanks the kind doctor in an extremely emotional way. The man waves in a friendly manner and advises that her sister should continue taking her medication until she has fully recovered. The doctor hears rustling paper and asks what the young man is searching for in the nearby cabinets in such a hurry. The boy turns around with a cynical smile, replying that he is merely admiring the interesting medicinal herbs there. The doctor warns in a serious tone that the price of the medicine will rise significantly, and the young woman with blue hair goes into complete shock. The con man feigns sadness, claiming that demand has increased so much that he can barely produce the elixirs anymore. The group leaves the clinic at night, and Alice is immensely grateful to the young man for helping her save her sister's life. Alice looks at the medicine sadly, lamenting that the money should last them a whole month. The young woman wonders what she will do next week while the protagonist observes her in complete silence. Suddenly, the boy excuses himself and snatches the medicine bag from her hand, leaving the girl completely confused. He calmly explains that he just needs to check one very important detail inside the pill packet. The young man puts one of the pills directly into his mouth to taste it, leaving the young woman with blue hair in a panic. She shouts indignantly, asking what he did, and the boy jokes, saying he's been expending a lot of energy lately. The young woman complains about the waste of expensive medicine, and the bizarre old man asks her not to be so stingy with the young man. Suddenly, the old man looks at the protagonist with a rather serious and suspicious expression in his eyes. The scene changes to the interior of the large, traditional medical clinic where silence reigns in the darkness of the night. We see the beautiful So-Hi putting one of the pills in her mouth to finally take her daily dose of medication. The young woman with pink hair gives a sweet smile, feeling much better soon after consuming the mysterious medicine. Alice lovingly holds her beloved sister's hand, relieved and overjoyed to see her rapid improvement. The blue-haired girl starts crying with emotion, thanking the protagonist for fulfilling her selfish wish. The two sisters hug happily as So-Hi wholeheartedly thanks the young hero who helped them so much. The kind old man watches the touching scene between the two with a tender and welcoming smile on his face. Jin-gwon gives a slight, knowing smile showing he is quite satisfied with the outcome of his actions. The sun rises the next day, and the hero accepts the thanks, asking only for rice cakes with meat next time. We see the clear blue sky shining above the roof of the traditional temple, where they are sheltered now. The protagonist savors his delicious rice cake with meat, specially prepared for breakfast. He highly praises the incredible taste of the food, saying that it's definitely much better when stuffed with meat. The old man appears down in the courtyard and curiously asks what the young man is doing sitting alone on the roof. The young man says the view from there is wonderful and asks how little Alice is doing on this new day. The old man says that she is sleeping like an angel in bed, since she seemed not to have rested properly for several days. Suddenly, the old man leaps incredibly high and lands lightly directly on the roof where the boy is. Jin-gwon notices the old man's agility and comments with a smile that he is also actually an experienced martial artist. The old man smiles, saying he's just an ordinary old man working various odd jobs to survive in this new world. The elderly man suddenly becomes extremely serious and warns that he saw the young man's suspicious behavior when he took the young woman's medicine. He stares closely at the protagonist with a look of distrust and great wisdom about things. The experienced man reveals that he saw the exact moment when the young man surreptitiously switched the bags of pills. He asks if the boy stole an identical bottle from the pharmacy and playfully compliments his dexterity. The old man curiously asks what the young man truly tasted like when he tried the doctor's pill. He asks seriously if the boy is absolutely certain that the medicine given by the doctor was a fake. The boy explains that the pill is actually nothing more than a highly addictive poison that only relieves her pain. He reveals that for this reason, he replaced the poison with real medicinal herbs that he found in the doctor's cupboards. The old man agrees, saying it would be a terrible shock for the girl to learn that she was poisoning her own sister. The old man praises the boy's heroic attitude, but Jin-gwon returns the compliment, saying that the real hero there is the old man. The veteran laughs casually, commenting that he became extremely interested in the story of that mysterious young man. Night falls once more over the big city, illuminating the fake healer's medical establishment in the darkness. The fake doctor secretly meets with two masked figures and hands over the large sum of money for the month. He smiles greedily, announcing that he overpaid and asks when he will finally be accepted as an official member of the group. The masked leader of the criminal group mocks his arrogance, saying that the high profits have made him too cocky. The hooded villain hands a valuable bag of magic stones to the doctor, who thanks him humbly and bowing. The doctor opens the bag of jewelry, noticing a smaller quantity than agreed upon, and the masked man responds curtly. The masked man explains that the quantity of magic stones has decreased and demands double the payment next time. He warns that the villain needs to show more loyalty, and the fake doctor thanks him for the advice with a tense smile on his face. The masked man sternly warns about the recent attack on the slave base and orders his accomplice to shut up. He makes a frightening threat, saying there will be serious consequences if any secrets of the criminal group are leaked. The doctor bows in fear, assuring them that he will keep the secret and wishing the dangerous individuals a safe journey back. The large, traditional door of the medical clinic slowly closes in the darkness after the departure of the mysterious figures. The fake healer angrily throws the bag of coins and magic stones onto the table in his silent office. The doctor grumbles angrily to himself, saying that the group keeps demanding more from him even after taking so much money. He swears through clenched teeth that he will avenge all that humiliation, but suddenly freezes when he feels something. The man turns around startled and tries to disguise his irritation by saying that he hadn't noticed the visitor. He sees the young man sitting calmly and accuses him of returning in the dead of night just to steal his medicine. Jin-gwon gives a mocking smile and tells the doctor not to worry because he has a very strong stomach. The villain gives a terrifying smile and says he doesn't care about the pills as long as the boy pays the full price for them. The protagonist replies that in fact the doctor is the one who should pay him for having brought a special cure to the charlatan. The lying healer is quite confused and suspiciously asks what he means by that statement. Jin-gwon shows one of the poison pills in his hand and announces that he has finally discovered the ideal remedy for the charlatan. The hero reveals with a menacing look that for con artists like him, the best remedy of all is a good beating. The doctor gives a sinister smile with red eyes and warns that pretending he saw nothing would be his best choice. The healer clenches his fist, revealing 3 dangerous metal needles hidden between his fingers. He prepares to unleash a deadly attack, firing his poison needles with astonishing speed. The poisonous needles fly through the air, glowing intensely and fatally towards the protagonist's face. The doctor shouts confidently, assuring that the deadly projectiles will not stop until they hit their target, no matter what. But incredibly, the young man moves his hand with extreme speed and catches all the poisonous needles in the air. The fake healer's eyes widened in complete panic when he saw how easily the young man stopped his attack. The villain recoils in fright, unable to believe that the boy managed to collect all the deadly needles. He screams in shock at seeing the young man do that with his bare hands, while the protagonist approaches him without haste. The boy advances quickly and silently, leaving the villain completely confused and unable to follow the movement. Then the young man delivers a devastating slap that sends the doctor being violently thrown across the room. The villain spits blood and screams in pain, lying on the ground, not understanding what just hit his face like that. He leans against the wooden wreckage and wonders in fear if such a powerful warrior has always existed in the region. Jin-gwon complains, saying that the coward uses life, saving needles only to cruelly murder people. He analyzes the previous attack, commenting that the energy of the blow was weak, that the trajectory was very clever. The hero smirks, finding the trick amusing, and warns the con artist healer that he needs to learn some manners. The villain angrily wipes the blood from his face and forcefully asks which powerful organization the boy belongs to. Jin-gwon scoffs at the criminal's tone and warns that he won't be able to say anything more in a few moments anyway. The healer analyzes the opponent, noting that he is fast and knowledgeable in medicine, but finds it strange that he doesn't use weapons. He stares at the protagonist seriously, asking if he is actually a fighter focused on close quarters combat. The hero calmly replies that he doesn't know what that fighter title is and introduces himself only by his real name. The villain realizes that the boy is strong and thinks that if he is a hand-to-hand fighter, he will have a huge advantage in the battle. He begins to concentrate a huge amount of purple poison magic in his hand, feeling totally superior to the boy. The criminal unleashes the torrent of poison, but the protagonist complains, saying the poison smells like pure sewage. The young man starts coughing heavily after unintentionally inhaling the foul, smelling purple smoke that has filled the entire office. The hero continues coughing amidst the poisonous smoke, while the villain explains that a fighter's strength lies in their breath. The fake doctor gives a big wry smile, stating that a fighter who is blinded and choked up close loses all his strength. He leaps high, preparing the final blow, and shouts that the defenseless hero is now nothing more than a resilient scarecrow. The villain angrily shouts that the boy will be the first to witness the absolute power of his new special ability. He conjures a gigantic whirlwind of purple poison that consumes the entire medical room in an explosion of dark energy. The lying healer gives an evil smile, believing he has defeated his powerful adversary with that great attack. Suddenly, Jin-gwon's calm voice echoes through the place, saying that it's only right to return everything one receives from their opponent. He warns that he will show his own power, and the villain stares in shock at his hand, which suddenly begins to bleed. The protagonist calmly approaches and reveals that he will use the new technique he just learned from the enemy's attack. The healer screams in pain as he notices that his fingers have been brutally broken by the boy's swift counterattack. The protagonist grimaces in disgust, complaining about the horrible stench of the poisonous blood oozing from the villain's body. The criminal retreats desperately, clutching his wounded and bleeding hand in the middle of the completely destroyed room. He uses his green healing magic to try and close the wound and wonders what kind of ability uses only his fingers. Jin-gwon gives a mocking, sideways smile and warns that what he just did wasn't a skill at all. He extends his middle finger in an obscene, mocking gesture and reveals with a smile that this is the technique he himself created. He raises his hand and explains that his fist is actually formed using only his fingers. Jin-gwon gives a mocking smile and introduces the name of his new move, which is called the finger fist. The villain shouts angrily, saying he's never heard of such a ridiculous name that sounds like it came straight out of a comic book. But the boy advances very quickly and hits his opponent right in the middle of his hand with his fingers. He delivers an extremely precise blow right to the opponent's arm joint, who screams at the impact. The villain recoils, groaning in pain, while the protagonist calmly repeats that this is not a skill. The hero points his finger smiling and emphasizes that he is only using his powerful finger fist in the fight. The gray-haired criminal shouts furiously, saying that such a bizarre technique is impossible. The boy hits him again very quickly, preventing the man from finishing his sentence. The young man assumes his preferred fighting stance and repeats the name of his attack, while the villain despairs. The opponent recoils in fear and attempts to mount a guard to protect himself from the protagonist's swift attacks. He growls angrily and asks how long the hero plans to continue mocking his strength in that way. Jin-gwon steps forward and comments that he heard that grandmasters can defeat opponents with just their fingers. The opponent's teeth widen as he realizes in shock that the boy is actually a feared martial arts master. He shouts that past techniques won't work if he protects his vital points and prepares the counterattack. But the protagonist is faster and hits him in the chest, saying he's going to paralyze his upper body. He unleashes an absurd sequence of rapid blows to paralyze the criminal's wrists and elbows. The hero finishes his sequence with one last devastating attack, using all his energy in his fingers. The villain screams in desperate pain as he feels his chest bones shatter from the force of the impact. The villain falls defeated and realizes that the boy had truly paralyzed him to the point where he couldn't even scream properly. With great pain, he looks up resentfully and curses the protagonist, calling him a damned, crazy, wretched bastard. He complains, saying that the hero actually used only pure brute force to land all those blows. Jin-gwon gives a mysterious smile and replies that he simply decided to give that name to his attack. He recalls his long, isolated training and remembers his oath never to lose to bad people. The boy trained his mind and body intensely, striving for absolute perfection in everything. But he confesses with a funny look that he even trains he would never lose at the famous game of rock, paper, scissors. The hero jokes that the villain should have thrown a rock to defeat his finger scissors. The villain grinds his teeth furiously and pulls out a secret potion, wondering how a mere martial artist dares to humiliate him. He consumes the energy from the valuable magic stones he guarded in order to drastically increase his power. The man activates his dangerous special ability to release poisonous blood in an attempt to turn the tide of the battle. He feels the power coursing through his body and celebrates deliriously upon realizing he has easily surpassed the ordinary level. The opponent transforms into a monster of pure dark energy and promises to demonstrate its overwhelming power. The man advances, releasing a gigantic aura, and swears, standing up, that he will annihilate the boy with that total power. The hero takes a deep, focused breath as he prepares to receive the opponent's attack. Suddenly, an extremely bright and intense blue light appears in the location, consuming the entire scene around them. The villain looks down in complete shock as he realizes that a huge hole of light has pierced his chest. The opponent's body slowly begins to disintegrate into dust in the air without him understanding what happened. The man's mind falls into complete despair upon realizing how easily his great technique has been destroyed. He wonders in horror what happened to his own body while the boy observes him with complete calm. The protagonist mockingly says that the villain scared him and keeps his clenched fist close to him. The villain realizes, shocked, that he is still alive and feels around, not understanding how his body didn't explode from the attack. The hero gives a slight smile and asks in a friendly manner if the opponent wants to try using their attack again. The boy says he is waiting for the promised show of power and asks if they should continue fighting. Jin-gwon clenches his fist tightly, making his veins bulge with an absurd amount of physical force. The man stares at the boy's fist and begins to sweat with pure terror upon noticing the abysmal difference in strength. The doctor falls to his knees on the floor, bowing and respectfully calling him Lord, leaving the young man confused. The day dawns, bringing a bright, clean light to the beautiful roof of the traditional clinic in that region. The beautiful, sick young woman lying in bed lets out a sigh of relief as the rest of the poison leaves her body. The doctor explains that he finally removed all the poison from her body and applied the legendary acupuncture technique. The hero laughs casually upon realizing that the terrible plague was actually just poison from the fake doctor. The beautiful young woman sleeps peacefully and looks much better after finally being cured. The gray-haired doctor shows a new special medicine and assures the young woman that she will feel much better. The old man asks if the healer is actually a rare apothecary, and the protagonist is left completely confused. It explains that hunters often awaken normal combat classes, such as swordsman or warrior, but it reveals that there are some special and extremely rare classes focused on poisons and medicines. The criminal becomes very proud and praises the old man's wisdom, confirming that he is a rare, elite apothecary. But the young blue-haired huntress delivers a violent slap to his head, telling him to stop lying. She complains, saying that he remains just a damned criminal who poisoned an entire village. The apothecary grinds his teeth, holding the rooster to his head, extremely irritated by that girl's rudeness. But he freezes in terror when he sees the protagonist raising his finger behind her with a frightening aura of death. The apothecary immediately bows, offering sincere apologies, while the girl stares at him, completely bewildered. The protagonist asks very seriously why someone with so much talent decided to commit these crimes. The gray-haired man looks away and remains completely silent for a brief, tense moment. He opens his hand, revealing pieces of a shiny jewel, and confesses that he did everything because of that object. The man explains that it is a mana stone that has become the main source of energy since the Great War. He says that all the evolution and technology of that new world were built around these rare jewels, but it reveals that the main reason for the obsession is the ability to amplify strength beyond normal limits. And he adds that these magic stones only appear in terrifying monsters or areas with a lot of energy. He confesses that he received an irresistible offer from the black market to hand over taxes in exchange for power. The blue-haired huntress anxiously asks if all the money they paid was just tribute. The apothecary confirms with complete confidence that all the gold collected was indeed passed on to the big bosses. Alice loses control and grabs him, demanding her money back, while her companions try to calm her down. She screams furiously, but suddenly focuses her attention on the bright necklaces and jewelry he wears around his neck. The group remains in absolute silence, watching the thief girl begin to plunder all the expensive jewelry from his neck. The apothecary cries, begging her not to take the necklaces, claiming they are sacred mementos of his father. But she continues to hit him and steal everything without giving a damn about his fake family dramas. The man with the swollen face warns that it will be very difficult to find the rest of the treasure that has already been sent. Jin-gwon asks thoughtfully about these crime bosses, and the apothecary starts trembling just thinking about it. The protagonist becomes extremely focused, demonstrating that he already knows exactly who is behind all of this. Wounded apothecary faces the young hero and realizes that he has very personal reasons for going after the gang. He offers to guide the hero directly to the criminal group's secret meeting place, and the young man accepts. The apothecary explains that the criminals act with utter arrogance because they have the strong support of the Blood Alliance. The boy asks, confused, about the name of this group and says he doesn't care if they are from an alliance or blood-related groups. The man gestures in surprise and jokes that the boy looks like he's lived isolated in a forest for 10 years. He explains in an imposing manner that the alliance is led by the greatest heroes in the world, known as the Four Kings. This is the dreaded guild of the blood god, and the hero becomes very tense upon recognizing the silhouette of one of the traitors. He explains that the terrible criminal organization that controls the entire region is actually known as the Mafia. She operates completely covertly throughout the region, illegally smuggling various mana stones. But worst of all is knowing that these dangerous bandits are closely protected by the powerful traitor guild. The apothecary concludes by asking mockingly if he has truly never heard of the powerful Blood Alliance. He admits that it's all just a strong rumor, but that such a large criminal group needs a powerful backer. Protagonist replies curtly with his head down, and the apothecary feels a terrible shiver of pure fear down his spine. A huge cloud of hatred and fury begins to spread through the room, leaving the criminal completely panicked. The friends and the apothecary recoil in terror upon noticing the sudden transformation in the young protagonist's gaze. The apothecary tries to catch his breath, swallowing hard as he senses an unprecedented murderous intent. The boy's eyes shine brightly, and he remembers the important words he heard from his father in the past. The master said that the incredible fist technique he was teaching should not be used for his revenge, and she explained with a sweet look that the most important thing in the life of a true warrior was to have responsibility. The boy looked at his small clenched fist, finding his father's words of wisdom very strange. He confesses to himself that even after 10 long years of training, that advice is the hardest to follow. He gives a slight smile and comments that now he has another excellent reason to finish off these guys. The hero orders the apothecary to show him the way to the secret hiding place, and the man agrees, terrified, at once. They arrive in front of a huge traditional building that serves as a discreet front for the large mafia there. Sitting and drinking a cup of tea, the protagonist asks if that apothecary is really the location of the secret meeting. The apothecary confirms, explaining that the mafia leaders usually come there every month on the first day of the full moon. The young hero listens attentively while his companions anxiously await the unfolding of his plan. Alice angrily complains about being lost and questions why the criminal keeps calling the young man Lord. The boy says his real name is Jin-gwon, but the apothecary continues to bow, afraid of another beating. The hero asks if there is any more useful information, but the apothecary confesses that he doesn't know anything else important. However, the criminal gives a mysterious, sly smile and assures that there is indeed one detail he knows with absolute certainty. He reveals that at the last meeting the bosses were furious because some madman destroyed the illegal slave base. He recalls that the henchman swore through clenched teeth to kill the person responsible for that great humiliation at the base. Jin-gwon finds the situation amusing and comments, laughing, that there must be another great vigilante hero operating in the region. The apothecary suspects that several other smaller guilds must also try to ally with the mafia to obtain the stones, and asks very cautiously if the young man really plans to fight alone against that entire dangerous mafia. The hero calmly replies that he just finds it very irritating to see weak cowards making a mess in his homeland. He turns to the experienced elder for more clues, and the old man confesses that he doesn't know the identity of the bosses. The veteran assures that he knows where to investigate since money always follows obscure paths in the darkness of the night. The hero points to the apothecary and orders to obtain clothes identical to those worn by the criminals of the organization. He sends young Alice to take care of the sick, along with the apothecary, and warns her to keep an eye on the crooked healer. The scene changes to the top of a beautiful traditional temple under a clear, blue sky decorated with white clouds. A man in brown clothes bows respectfully to receive the mysterious figure wearing a dark cloak. The man with his hair tied back becomes extremely tense and announces that the monthly tribute has already been duly paid to the group. The masked intruder walks imposingly through the large hall, putting all the guards present on alert. The figure under the hood gives a wry smile from behind his wooden mask and asks if they recognize him from there. The apothecary despairs upon realizing that the hero intends to hunt down the criminal group alone and without any support. Back on the scene, the man stammers nervously, claiming that the big bosses were there just 2 days ago. He says he needs to send a message inside the base, but suddenly feels an overwhelming shockwave. The hero in disguise throws a violent punch, explaining in his thoughts that if you close the rat hole, rats that have been hiding deep in the darkness will finally be forced to emerge into the light of day. A catastrophic explosion destroys the entire wooden temple, sending debris flying through the air. A gigantic cloud of dust and gray smoke engulfs the entire region after the terrible impact of the direct attack. 2 people passing by on the street look back in complete shock upon hearing the loud bang of that explosion. They realize that the corrupt loan shark's building has exploded and spot the silhouette of the hooded hero emerging from the ashes. The protagonist walks calmly in his disguise, while the old man observes him with a look of utter astonishment. The experienced old man with the white beard is completely speechless when he sees how easily the boy destroys everything. He admires the fact that a young man has so much power and points out that all this strength comes not from skills, but from martial arts. The old man comments that he has lived long enough to witness this and guides the hero to the gang's next hideout. The young man walks confidently, but suddenly asks if there is something bothering his experienced companion. The old man explains that the rumors about the immense importance and value of mana stones in that new world are true. He explains that the Hunters Association manages the jewels very carefully due to agreements with the 4 kings, and warns that if the Traitors Guild is in charge of the Mafia, the entire fictional piece of the world could end forever. The young hero under the wooden mask listens to the warnings seriously and keeps his focus on the ultimate goal. They stopped in front of another large traditional base, and the boy warns that they will soon discover the truth when they go inside. The guards at the location are suspicious of the presence of the 2 masked intruders and draw their weapons, ready to act. The protagonist gives a creepy smile from behind the wooden mask and proposes a quick game, asking who he is. The henchman is confused for a second and replies hesitantly, saying that he seems to be one of the mafia's own members. The hero replies that the answer is correct, and at that moment sends the entire second building flying through the air in ruins. Several criminal bases of slave smugglers and receivers are completely annihilated one by the boy. The townspeople begin gleefully discussing a mysterious masked hero who is wiping out all the guilds. Everyone calls him the Nameless Wanderer and says he's much better than any legendary level hunter. People continue to shout his codename in the streets, celebrating the great achievements of the masked hero. The protagonist under the wooden mask listens to the compliments without saying a word in the dead of night. In the main hideout, the villains lament that almost all of their northern and southern branches have been destroyed. The A-level hunter named San-Wu-Tan suspects there is a traitor infiltrated in the group revealing secrets. The other criminals at the table agree that there is definitely a spy working for the masked enemy. A hooded woman smiles ironically, claiming that blaming a spy based on clothing is a huge exaggeration. She ironically accuses San-Wu-Tan of incompetence for failing to properly manage the locations under his command. The great masked leader orders everyone to shut up at once, interrupting the discussion with absolute authority. The hooded man complains sharply, saying that nobody knows what the hero looks like or what power he usually uses. He curses all the henchmen as incompetent idiots for failing to defeat a single masked invader all by themselves. The hooded woman volunteers to handle the mission, and the boss sternly asks if she's truly confident. She mocks San-Wu-Tan again, assuring him that she will do a much better job than her incompetent colleague. The leader orders Nan Hyang to handle the case and demands that she bring the intruder alive so he can cut off his head himself. The boy comments with a sly smile that the defeated villains must be desperate to end his life. The apothecary asks worriedly if it's safe to create so much confusion as many B-level henchmen could be a danger. The hero replies that ants are useless against a tiger, and the apothecary wonders in fear if he is one of the 4 kings. The apothecary curiously asks why they return to the Maha Guild's base and says the place is too good for visitors. The hero kicks and smashes the large entrance door to the Maha Guild headquarters, demonstrating that he doesn't care about the rules. Inside, the muscular henchmen shout excitedly, announcing to their boss that the great day of their revenge has arrived. Leader Nahan Day grits his teeth, stating that the swelling from the slap is gone down and that he will not be humiliated by anyone again. He complains furiously, saying that the beggar cheated very dishonestly in the slackguard's flight at the casino. The henchmen agree, laughing loudly, assuring that the beggar will stand no chance against the boss's new arm skill. But all the noisy celebration is interrupted when they see the protagonist's silent presence passing by. The criminal screams in terror when he comes face to face with the young hero calmly walking past him. The other members of the Maha Guild widen their eyes in complete shock upon noticing the boy's unexpected presence. The guild leader turns around startled and stammers as he realizes that the dreaded slap-beggar has returned of his own free will. The man with the tied back hair turns red with fury and shouts, calling the protagonist a filthy, wretched beggar. The boy doesn't even bother to respond and delivers another devastating slap that travels very quickly through the air. The leader attempts to block the blow, using both hands crossed in front of his face, and lets out a grunt of pain at the force. But suddenly he feels only a light touch on his forehead and opens his eyes, completely confused by the lack of impact of the blow. The boy smiles and compliments his good manners, saying that from now on they will always greet each other that way. The hero calmly walks past the humiliated opponent while the frightened leader takes a few steps back, maintaining his composure. The protagonist sits comfortably in one of the wooden chairs in the place under the tense gaze of everyone there. The boy orders, with a tone of absolute superiority, that they immediately spread a very important warning. He gives a cynical smile, announcing that from that moment on, the nameless wanderer has taken control of the guild. The guild leader gives a forced, sheepish smile and mockingly asks if he actually heard the statement correctly. The long-haired hero replies curtly that he heard perfectly well what was announced in the room. The young man smiles, calmly stating that all this change will ultimately serve an excellent purpose. He questions whether the villain isn't ashamed of shaming his own parents by committing crimes and asks if they are alive. The man advances furiously, shouting that he built the guild with much sweat and assures that his parents are alive and well. The boy delivers a violent punch to his face, replying that if that's the case, he shouldn't live like a damned criminal. The hero sits down again and asks if anyone else has any complaints, while the apothecary calls him a bully. The scene focuses on an old straw broom, meticulously cleaning all the dust and dirt accumulated on the stone floor. The once powerful guild leader now cries in humiliation, broom in hand, vowing revenge for sweeping the floor. The hero calls his name authoritatively, and the villain with very puffed cheeks responds in fright at the same time. The boy meditates calmly and tells the man to sweep more quietly because the noise of the broom is irritating his mind. He desperately wonders if the boy's demon can even read minds and laments. Having reached this terrible situation, he reflects on the power hierarchy of that world where B-level hunters usually receive the best treatment. The man cries, thinking he should live like a king there, and swears through clenched teeth that the legendary Iron Fist will not fall. The protagonist demands that he clean every corner of the place, and the villain mentally complains, calling the boy lazy. The apothecary praises his agility in dominating the entire guild, and the hero simply asks if the favor was fulfilled. The gray-haired apothecary confirms that he has put up posters all over town announcing the new guild's dominance. Because the nameless wanderer is extremely famous, rumors about the conquest spread incredibly fast. The boy in disguise watches the sunset, confident that the rumors will soon reach the ears of the leaders of the big mafia. The apothecary questions whether they're really only showing up because of gossip, and the hero assures him that they definitely will. He observes the starry night sky and predicts with complete conviction that villains may appear that very day. The boy says, bored, that he can't even see an ant on the street, and the old man asks him to have a little more patience. The old man notices his nervousness as he shakes his leg and suggests that the enemies may have been delayed on their way there. Suddenly, 3 very firm knocks are heard on the guild door, immediately drawing the young protagonist's attention. He stands up excitedly, ready to deliver a powerful blow, thinking that the dangerous mafia assassins have finally arrived. But suddenly he freezes in complete shock upon hearing an extremely sweet and gentle female voice coming from the door. A beautiful woman charmingly appears, playfully complaining about being called by such an ugly nickname. 3 beautiful young women arrive at the scene, and the leader politely asks if he is indeed the nameless wanderer. The beautiful blue-eyed girl gives the letter a loving kiss and announces that she has prepared a special banquet for the great hero. She hands over the invitation, scented with her lipstick mark, and invites the entire guild to visit her famous establishment. The scene changes to the interior of the guild, where we see the weapons arranged near the open window under the moonlight of the night. Lise complains jealously with her arms crossed, saying that the beautiful young Jisang has completely bewitched the boy. The old man laughs, commenting that it must have been a shocking sight, and examines the perfumed invitation with considerable curiosity. The blue-haired girl is confused, and the veteran warns her that she's the only person in town who doesn't know the famous place. This is a famous entertainment venue, well known throughout the region, that usually shines brightly at night. The huntress warns that the place is dangerous and full of dark rumors, and the protagonist says the situation seems serious. The hero blushes and smiles, saying that the place challenges a man's spirit, while the girl mocks him. The group decides to accept the special invitation and sets off immediately towards the luxurious, perfumed pavilion to discover the truth. The dangerous A-rank hunter named San Wu-tan walks imposingly down the main corridor of the luxurious palace. The beautiful leader of the pavilion, surrounded by masked guards, greets him and calmly asks what brings the young man there. The feared second most powerful member of the mafia gives a wry, ironic smile, head held high, before the leader of the pavilion, the beautiful Nan Hying, who is actually the third most powerful member of the mafia, asks if he came just to see her. The boy replies sharply that he would never come to see a venomous creature like her and demands only that she serve the drink. The red-eyed woman gives a wicked, sly smile and silently notices that the boy is trying to find something out. She orders her henchman to prepare a table in the VIP room, and the hunter arrogantly complains about her delay. The beautiful leader smiles sadistically, thinking to herself that all his arrogance will end that very day. She thinks about the huge reward of mana stones she will receive from the boss and vows to rip San Wu-tan's head off with her power. She orders the guard to mix a powerful sleeping potion into his wine, and the henchman warns, terrified, that the drug can knock out elephants. The villain demands the use of 10 entire packs. To be absolutely certain, she will be able to knock out the dreaded level a monster. The muscular hunter walks proudly, calling the girl an arrogant fox and vowing not to let her steal his prey so easily. The shark-toothed hunter gives a psychopathic grin, vowing to devour the mana stones and the wanderer all at once. The hero appears devouring several gigantic pieces of cooked meat, and the apothecary, frightened, asks him to eat calmly. Alice asks if he went hungry for days, and the boy replies with his mouth full that he gets tired of eating only rice cakes. The former leader serves drinks in a friendly manner, calling the young man Lord, and the hero is puzzled by the sudden change in his tone of voice. The man praises the royal treatment he received in the VIP room of the venue thanks to the immense and well-deserved reputation of the nameless wanderer. The huntress encourages everyone to eat the delicious free food, and the boy worriedly warns her not to choke on the table. The beautiful young Hua Ryung appears very cheerfully and hugs the protagonist's neck, calling him by his affectionate nickname. The charming young woman rests her face on the young man's shoulder and confesses with a passionate look that she was very much looking forward to his arrival. Alice turns red with anger and grinds her teeth in jealousy, gripping the chopsticks tightly as she sees the Jizing's affection for him. The young woman sweetly explains that she closed off the entire main floor of the pavilion in order to provide the best possible care to the group. She gestures delicately, asking everyone to put their problems aside and enjoy the luxurious banquet at the palace. The girl affectionately holds the hero's large hand and sweetly calls him Lord, leaving the young man completely embarrassed. She asks with a seductive look if he isn't curious to see the spell table she's set up just for the hero there. Alice thinks furiously and jealously that Hussy is throwing herself at him and vows the boy won't fall for such a cheap trick. The protagonist blushes and confesses to being very curious to see what prize awaits him in the room. Alice tries to stop him by shouting that going into that room alone is extremely dangerous. Suddenly, the girl feels an overwhelming dizziness and falls to her knees complaining of a severe headache. The beautiful young Jisang guides him to a special empty room, claiming it's a place reserved only for guests. She says, with ulterior motives, that the place is so quiet that nobody would know anything if something happened inside. The villainess thinks to herself that no matter how strong he is, in the end he's still just an ordinary man. The hero still has his same love-struck, goofy expression and smiles, completely bewildered, in a rather funny way. She internally celebrates the ease of the plan and encourages him to try the famous and prized traditional house drink. The hero drinks it all at once, unaware that the cup contains a poison strong enough to take down elite monsters. The villainess anxiously awaits the sleeping pill's effect, but panics when she sees the young man celebrating the delicious taste of the wine. He highly praises the excellent quality of the palace's drink and excitedly demands that she serve enough another glass of wine. The villain is completely horrified, her eyes wide, unable to understand how he withstood the lethal dose. She tries to disguise her absolute panic by forcing a smile while trembling as she pours herself another shot of the drink. The woman discreetly pours another large quantity of the strong, sleeping potion into the new glass to ensure victory. The guy drinks it all again and comments, in a rather cynical way, that the taste of the wine seems a bit different this time. He stares at the villainess with a menacing look, revealing that he already knew she had been putting poison in his drink all along. The girl's heart nearly stops as she realizes, in utter panic, that her entire secret plan has been discovered by the hero. The hero grabs her chin tightly and forces her to swallow her own poisoned wine, saying they're going to get closer. The boy squeezes her face and demands to know immediately who gave the order to kill him and what kind of poison they used there. He pours the entire bottle of wine directly into her mouth, leaving the villain desperate and coughing up her own strong poison. She curses the protagonist in tears, desperate to know that the huge dose of sleeping pills will also make her faint. The villain loses her balance and falls to her knees on the wooden floor of the room, unable to resist the strong effects of the drug. The boy looks at her body on the floor, regretting not being able to ask more questions after letting her pass out there. Absolute silence returns to the luxurious room as the villain remains unconscious due to her own potent poison. Sometime later, the young Jisang's hand moves slowly as she begins to wake up and lets out a soft groan. She sits holding her head very confused and tries to remember what went wrong right after her defeat in the room. Suddenly, the hero's firm voice asks if she has finally woken up, leaving the villain in absolute panic once again. The protagonist points to the empty seat at the table and calmly orders her to sit down so he can talk to her. He gives a sly smile, warning that her poisons will have no effect, and tells the girl not to try anything funny. The villain remembers the exact moment of his attack and realizes in shock that the boy knew about her plan from the beginning. She tries to maintain a cool composure by lying that she has already poisoned his companions, who were waiting outside the room. Suddenly, the door opens, and the apothecary happily announces that he has finished detoxifying the bodies of all his companions. The young man praises the apothecary's quick and efficient work while the villainess stares at him, completely shocked by the revelation. The gray-haired man proudly displays the detox bottle, claiming to be the right-hand man of the great hero. He reveals that he discovered the complicity of all the other young Jisangs in the place and tied each of them up in the hallway. The hero focuses his attention on her seriously and says that now that they've finished their drinks, she must answer his questions. The boy points his finger at her in an authoritative manner and demands to know where the main leader of the large mafia there is. The long-haired villainess grinds her teeth in fury and bites her lip, her head down, unwilling to give any easy answers. She screams with a furious look, vowing never to reveal the exact location of her supreme master's headquarters. The hero rises with a terrifying aura of hatred, and the villainess tremblingly asks if he would have the courage to hit a woman. The boy raises his open hand, coldly replying that gender doesn't matter when it comes to receiving punishment for bad choices. She completely panics, confessing that she's just an ordinary mafia member and reveals that a special key is needed. The girl cries in fright, explaining that the pavilion leader possesses the key that grants direct access to the organization's head. She reveals that the big problem is needing to use 2 secret keys at the same time to open the hidden portal. The boy analyzes the situation with the apothecary, and the gray-haired man confirms that there is a big problem with that plan. He explains that the keys have an alarm spell, and if either one is stolen, the other will receive an intrusion alert. The man understands that they need to steal both keys at exactly the same time, and the villain rejoices to see that they believed him. She mentally celebrates managing to send the boy straight to his death against the leader, "Who is the strongest warrior there?" Protagonist smiles with his arms crossed and orders them to split up to steal the 2 keys under cover of night. He then asks the elderly man to help clean up all the mess in the destroyed room, and the veteran agrees amicably. Alice asks if Jin-gwon really trusts that woman, but he replies that traps only make him stronger. The boy tells everyone to be careful while his companions think that nothing bad can happen to a monster. The villain watches the young man walk away, thinking he's just a proud country bumpkin who doesn't know the real world. She recalls that the owner of the pavilion is a powerful class A hunter and that anyone would bow before her. Meanwhile, in the VIP room, a dangerous and very strong individual anxiously awaits the arrival of the invaders. The woman gives a wicked smile, believing that the group's fate will be death anyway. The apothecary expresses concern, warning that the VIP room is dominated by mobsters, and dealing with them will be anything but easy. Jin-gwon gives a mocking smile, saying he had a great idea, leaving his companions with a terrible feeling. Inside the VIP room, the monsters drink heavily and ask who might have called for the girls there. Suddenly, a young woman enters the room, saying in a sweet voice that no one needed to call for them. Alice appears in disguise and introduces herself with a false name, saying that she came to serve the customers of her own free will. The mobster is captivated by her beauty and asks if only the 2 of them came for the appointment. The girl confirms and introduces her supposed older sister, claiming that she is extremely shy. The apothecary appears disguised as a woman and mentally curses Jin-gwon for that absurd disguise idea. The mobsters start laughing, quite animated by the presence of the 2 supposed women at the table. The man compliments the apothecary's appearance, while his companion swallows his pride and pours the wine into his glass. Even though he's dying of embarrassment over the situation, the apothecary admits that the hero's crazy plan actually worked. He analyzes the drunken mobsters and notices that even when pretending to be drunk, their movements are perfect. The man realizes that even with friendly smiles, those criminals leave no room for vigilance. He notices that everyone there is a Class B hunter and realizes that it would have been very dangerous to fight alone. The apothecary closes his eyes, trying to stay focused, and wonders where exactly the secret key might be. He remembers the information that the red-haired man carries the key to the place with him. He notices that no one at the table has red hair and realizes he needs to find a way to get out of there. The apothecary plans to poison everyone's drink using his special skill to solve the problem. But before he could act, a terrifying presence appeared behind him, leaving the apothecary in shock. The monsters stand up in surprise, asking the red-haired boss if he wasn't resting. The apothecary freezes upon seeing the red-haired man and trembles with fear at his overwhelming energy. He senses the subject's aura and realizes with shock that it is a feared class A hunter. He remembers Jin-gwon saying that stealing the key would be very easy to do in the VIP room. The apothecary cries inwardly, realizing that the mission is nearly impossible and that they might die there. One of the mobsters offers a new table of drinks, warning that the previous bottle had a trick. The boss refuses, saying he wants to drink more, and orders the apothecary to pour the wine into his glass. The apothecary is relieved to have used a concealing remedy, preventing them from being detected. He takes the opportunity to try and confirm if the secret key is hidden in the giant's clothes. The dangerous leader gives a curious, sly smile, waiting to find out what trick has been prepared against him. The apothecary extends the bottle and offers the drink in a sweet voice, trying not to arouse suspicion. Suddenly, the villain grabs his wrist with extreme violence, leaving the apothecary terrified. The disguised man stammers with fear and asks in a trembling voice if he has made some terrible mistake. The upper-class man stares closely at him and asks what plan he has to disguise himself as a woman. With each level a hunter gains, their physical attributes and stats increase exponentially. The giant squeezes his hand tightly, and the apothecary cries out in pain, begging to release his wrist. The villain sniffs the air and reveals with disdain that his heightened senses detected the smell of anesthetic. The apothecary refuses in fear and realizes in shock that his opponent possesses the rare attribute of a beast. Upon awakening as a hunter, each person can receive attributes such as fire, ice, earth, or poison. Rare attributes like beast and lightning are only unlocked when the hunter reaches a very high level. The apothecary possesses the poison attribute, which is used to inflict negative effects on enemies. San Wu-tan uses his senses, heightened by the beast, and squeezes his neck, demanding the truth. The disguised person claims he spilled a drink on his clothes, and desperately tries to figure out how to escape. The villain scoffs at the flimsy excuse and grabs his arm while Alice watches in a panic. Suddenly, a colored substance is spat directly into the face of the powerful class a hunter. One of the mobsters is speechless when he sees the girl drinking it all at once without hesitation. Alice feigns dizziness, spins around the room, and deliberately spills her drink all over the table. The enraged class a leader shouts, demanding that those two drunks be removed from his presence. The two are ejected from the VIP room as they walk down the corridors towards the exit. The apothecary regrets leaving empty-handed but is relieved to have survived the A-level hunter. Alice wakes up from her fake fainting spell and whispers that she managed to save much more than just a life. The girl reveals with a smile that she was acting to deflect any suspicion from the criminals. She pulls a small bag from her chest and reveals that she stole it directly from the pocket of the terrible hunter. The girl proudly shows off the cloth bag, assuring everyone that the secret key is inside. The apothecary's eyes widen in complete shock when he realizes she has picked the hunter's pocket. He remembers when he complained to Jin-gwon, saying that a Class D thief wouldn't be of any help. In that conversation, the apothecary insisted on her level, but Jin-gwon questioned this obsession. The hero smiled and clasped what the apothecary imagined he himself possessed in the story. The man respectfully replied that a powerful leader like him should be at least Class A. The young man gave a mysterious smile upon hearing the power estimate coming from his companion. Jin-gwon revealed that Alice herself had stolen his holy book without him noticing. He explained that to be able to steal from him like that, she was much more than a Class D officer. Back in the present, the young woman opens the small bag, but is confused when she can't find any keys. The apothecary freezes when he realizes that the girl actually managed to steal the powerful class, a hunter. He asks if she spat out the drink to save him, risking death at that location. Alice looks away and asks if he was bothered by being saved by a thief. She recalls the turbulent past and states that theoretically the two are declared enemies. The young woman says she hates the apothecary, but admits she wouldn't let anyone die in front of her. She looks back, remembering the hero, and knows exactly what the boy would do in that situation. The girl smiles, stating with certainty that Jin-gwon would do the same to save his companion. The apothecary is embarrassed, and the young woman asks mockingly if her attitude wasn't incredible. The man feigns ignorance and grumbles that this silly kindness is the quickest way to death. Alice gets furious, demanding a real thank you for the rescue instead of boring lectures. The apothecary turns his face away and promises to prepare a growth potion for her when they return. Suddenly, a terrifying burst of energy destroys the ceiling behind them in the building's hallway. The apothecary turns pale when he realizes they've forgotten two crucial details about the enemy. First, all the mobsters were subordinates, and the boss was already planning to kill everyone in the room. Secondly, the hunter's beast attribute makes him extremely protective of his belongings. San Wu-tan emerges from the midst of the fire, enraged that they dared to touch his sacred belongings. The monster licked its lips excitedly, realizing that tonight's hunt was going to be a lot of fun. The Class A hunter lets out an extremely loud, wild roar that echoes throughout the hall. The predator's roar activates an ability that completely paralyzes the bodies of its terrified victims. Alice tries to breathe on the floor, but desperately realizes that her muscles no longer obey her. The apothecary tries to protect the girl and shouts for her to run as the monster lunges forward with claws. The villain unleashes a brutal attack, slashing the apothecary's chest in a fraction of a second. The man is thrown far away, bleeding heavily, and the girl screams in shock for her companion. The hunter gives a sadistic smile, warning that he won't kill them quickly so he can enjoy the hunt. Alice, lying on the floor, trembles in terror, unable to breathe under the overwhelming pressure. The monster extends its sharp claws, announcing that the official hunt has just begun there. The apothecary rises in fury, comparing the villain to the most terrifying monsters of the portals. He summons purple poisonous spheres in the air around the hunter, preparing a powerful technique. The apothecary unleashes a storm of purple poison that consumes the villain's body in explosions. The boss notices the poisonous mist and realizes that the enemy is trying to use his keen sense of smell against him. Incredibly, the monster swallows all the purple poison smoke directly through its mouth. The villain swallows the poison and smiles, ordering the apothecary to try harder to entertain the predator. San Wu-tan stares at the place, his terrifying yellow eyes gleaming intensely in the darkness. He notices that the young huntress has disappeared, and the apothecary explains seriously that he sent her away from there. The man warns with a focused look that taking care of a noisy beast alone will be more than enough. He used his special needle to cure the paralysis caused by the elite hunter's terrifying roar. We remember when he explained to the girl that the two of them would have no chance of escaping if they went together. He assured her that he would buy her as much time as possible so that she could warn Jin-gwon about the great danger. Alice runs desperately complaining about the apothecary's arrogance, but hoping that he manages to survive. The young woman continues running hurriedly, determined to bring the hero back to the location by any means necessary. A massive curtain of smoke and debris begins to rise across the battlefield on that dark night. San Wu-tan leaps from a height in fury, preparing a devastating direct attack against his opponent on the ground. The monster violently lashes out with its sharp claws at the apothecary's head, who defends himself. The apothecary quickly draws his heavy needle, the exclusive weapon of his special combat class. He manages to block the enemy's claw attack with the heavy needle, creating several bright sparks. The villain smiles sadistically, praising the opponent's masculinity, even though he is dressed as a woman. The long-haired hero gets annoyed by the mockery and consumes a forbidden pill to increase his power. The pharmacist begins to sweat profusely as he remembers with considerable tension that this is already his second pill of the day. He recalls that he needed to consume the first elixir just to be able to withstand the rival's initial attack. The apothecary manages to withstand the boss's new blows, who is surprised by the sudden increase in his strength. The A-level hunter is having a lot of fun with the contest while the poison begins to accumulate in the hero's body. The apothecary spits up a lot of blood, knowing that using a third forbidden pill would be completely fatal. Suddenly, the hero's eyes widen as he senses the dangerous approach of a far more overwhelming energy. San Wu-tan lets out a loud, sadistic laugh and warns that he's going to start fighting in a much more brutal way now. The monster leaps violently, shattering the wooden floor of the place with the force of its powerful stomp. The apothecary leaps back nimbly, trying to dodge the pieces of rock flying towards him. He groans in pain as he realizes that only the impact of his opponent's stomp on the ground was enough to injure his body. The hero stares at the enormous wave of flames approaching and wonders if this is the true power of a Class A hero. A devastating punch from the villain hits the spot, creating a massive explosion of dust and destruction throughout the room. The clawed hunter realizes that the opponent jumped back on purpose in order to cushion the blow. The monster approaches imposingly, disdainfully warning the boy that he has nowhere left to run. He promises to end the boy's life painlessly because he had fun, but suddenly he feels something very strange. The villain grins sharply as he realizes that the cornered rat has finally decided to attack the cat. The apothecary rises, surrounded by a frightening purple aura, admitting that fighting like this isn't really his style. He confesses that he has faced much scarier monsters and vows that he will not give up on his life. San Wu-tan becomes extremely irritated when he sees a mere B-class hunter acting so arrogantly in the fight. The hero spits more blood, smiling, and insists that even he finds his own behavior there very strange. He thinks that if he had simply abandoned the young thief, his own well-being would have been completely guaranteed. The apothecary backed Mun-do staggers wounded, knowing full well that running away cowardly doesn't suit him at all. He remembers Jin-gwon and smiles, knowing that the hero would surely save that girl's life without hesitation. The boy wonders if he's gone completely mad after spending so much time with such generous people. He decides to plunge his heavy needle directly into his own chest to unleash his maximum power in the fight. The hero accepts his fate with a smile and challenges the fearsome elite hunter to the ultimate showdown. San Wu-tan mocks the boy, asking if committing suicide with that needle was the best idea he ever had. But suddenly the monster's eyes widen as it senses that the opponent's speed has increased absurdly. The apothecary advances with impressive speed, surprising his rival who tries to keep up with the movement. The villain watches the boy's terrifying energy rise to the heavens and notices that the needle in his chest has amplified his power. The long-haired hero activates his special ability, preparing to fuse his combat needles. He conjures his scarlet blood needles that glow very intensely all around his body. The swift attack strikes the opponent, creating a large beam of red light and smoke in the middle of the dark corridor. The two exchange attacks at incredible speed, destroying the walls of the pavilion with the force of their fight. The apothecary manages to deliver a precise cut that makes the powerful class a hunter bleed for the first time. San Wu-tan laughs at the boy's audacity and asks if he's been hiding his prey all this time. Mun-do points his glowing needle and asks, with a sarcastic smile, if the villain has started to get nervous. The monster replies no and charges forward furiously, demanding that the hero make the battle much more fun. The two opponents exchange extremely fast and violent blows in the middle of the destroyed hall of the pavilion. Mun-do realizes with considerable concern that time is against him and that the situation will only worsen if he delays. He decides he needs to end the fight as quickly as possible and unleashes another swift blow with his spear. The A-level villain simply dodges disdainfully, finding the opponent's effort a complete disappointment in combat. The monster holds the needle with ease and taunts, saying that its attacks have become nothing more than useless despair. The mafia boss asks if the boy really thought a bee sting would be able to stop his claws. Suddenly, the villain becomes confused upon noticing several red needles of energy floating around his body. The apothecary says the villain acted like a beast the whole time and stares at him with an extremely defiant look. He taunts that acting this way means the elite hunter also possesses the limited brain of a beast. The opponent smiles as he notices the great change in his abilities and realizes that the needle hides a lot of power. The A-level hunter warns that such an absurd power increase is sure to come at a very high price for him. The apothecary's secret technique requires piercing one's own heart with poison to push the body beyond its limits. However, prolonged use of this deadly poison transforms the ability into a terrifying technique of mutual destruction. Mun-do spits up a lot of blood, remembering that he never imagined he would have to use this suicidal technique in his entire life. We see a flashback where Jin-gwon calmly asks why he doesn't simply use his transformation. The apothecary explains that he can only use the power by consuming mana stones against enemies too strong for him. He grumbles, saying he's out of mana stones, but confesses that there's still one last secret resource. The protagonist gives him a whack on the head when he hesitates to put his precious life at risk in battle. The young hero complains, saying that he already knows the answer, and Mun-do insists that the plan requires risking his own life. Jin-gwon explains with a smile that a warrior who lives by the sword must always put his life at risk in order to evolve. The apothecary recalls that valuable advice and admits that he felt like a complete idiot for asking that question. He focuses his attention on his opponent and decides that now is the exact moment to commit that same folly from the past. The elite hunter's eyes widen in complete shock as he feels the apothecary's energy increase dramatically. Du angrily warns that the time has come for the villain to also put his own life at risk in that fight. Using his own life force as fuel, he prepares to unleash an attack that surpasses all limits. He activates his life-cutting needle, directing all the accumulated energy against the opponent's chest, but that the terrifying sharp-toothed monster only gives a sadistic smile, demonstrating complete confidence in victory. A terrible roar echoes through the hall as the hero's needles are completely shattered by the rival's strength. Du is driven to despair when he realizes that the power barrier of an A-class hunter is impossible to overcome. The opponent grabs the hero by the neck, coldly stating that no predator risks its life for mere prey. The sharp-clawed villain activates his special wolf hunting ability, preparing to tear his opponent apart. Du's arm is severely injured and bleeds profusely after taking the impact of his rival's devastating attack. The monster leaps furiously, vowing to tear his body apart without giving him any chance to defend himself in the battle. He begins to unleash insane claw attacks and laughs loudly at the suffering of his opponent, who tries to dodge. The apothecary tries to protect himself, but laments, noticing that the power difference remains immense even at his limit. The hunter promises to rip out and devour his heart while he is still alive, before the organ rots from the poison. Du leans on his spear and curses his opponent, calling him a wretched monster while trying to catch his breath in the fight. The long-haired hero knows very well that he cannot let himself be carried away by his rival's insane fighting pace. Suddenly, he starts coughing up a lot of blood as he senses that the time limit for his forbidden pill has come to an end. The terrible side effect of the poison in his heart begins to paralyze his body, and he pulls out 2 purple spheres. The boy releases a massive torrent of poisonous smoke, enraging his opponent for using yet another smoke screen. Du tries to move through the fog, but realizes with alarm that his muscles no longer respond to commands. Suddenly, the villain emerges from the shadows and grabs the boy, assuring him that it's time to put an end to the cheap tricks. The apothecary is shocked, and the enemy explains that his 5 senses are far superior to those of ordinary hunters. He reveals that he knew the hero's exact location from the beginning, and that he pretended to be knave just to give false hope. The elite hunter smiles sadistically, stating that watching the prey go from hope to despair is much more fun. The strangled apothecary calls him mentally ill and sadly wonders if that will be his tragic end there. The long-haired hero feels his heart fail and accepts that his time is running out. He laments his situation and thinks he should have lived a slightly better life before dying like this. The young man confesses with melancholy that he spent his life pulling scams and ended up getting screwed over by trying to do the right thing. But he breathes a sigh of relief as he remembers that meeting his beloved master was the best thing in his life. He fondly remembers training hard alongside the protagonist, who always encouraged him to improve. The apothecary remembers the fun times he spent with his new companions on that great journey. He even remembers the young hero's funny faces and realizes that he was truly very happy alongside them. Du screams with all his might, and the villain asks, laughing, if the boy has finally gone mad with pure terror. The A-level hunter licks his blood-stained lips with a wicked grin, ready to savor his victory. The monster charges forward, roaring with rage, aiming to rip out its opponent's heart and end the fight once and for all. The apothecary closes his eyes and begins to cry silently, believing that this would be his last breath. He trembles with rage upon realizing that the playful master was the only one he thought of at the moment of his death. The boy cries out, shouting that the blame for him dying there lies entirely with that irresponsible teacher. We remember when he asked Jin-gwon what he should do if his life were in real danger. The hero wiped his nose, said disdainfully to the apothecary, "Just shout his name and he'll come save you." He screams desperately, begging Jin-gwon to come save him immediately while comically crying. Du opens his eyes in fright as he feels the violent approach of the class, a hunter's deadly claws. San Wu-tan stops his attack and makes a face of extreme confusion upon hearing the young man's insult. Jin-gwon suddenly appears, blocking the attack with a piece of wood and complaining about being insulted there. The apothecary is completely speechless when he realizes that his master has actually appeared to save him. The red-haired monster tries to bite the wood furiously to free itself from the hero's block. He spits out the pieces of wood and takes a few steps back to assess the strength of his new opponent. The apothecary falls seated on the wooden floor, extremely relieved that he was not murdered by the villain. The protagonist complains about the insult, and Mun-do is surprised to notice that his savior's face is swollen. The hero with the red cheek points at the villain and asks if he was the one who went around beating up his friends. He tells his teammate to rest and recover, then walks imposingly towards his great rival. The young hero assures with a serious look that he will show what happens when a beast bares its fangs at a human. The story goes back an hour in time, showing the silent interior of one of the rooms in the traditional pavilion. We see the immense iron gate that serves as a secret entrance to the main base of the city's large mafia. Suddenly, a monstrous punch hits the gate, creating a giant hole and destroying the entire iron structure. Jin-gwon calmly opens the dented gate, disdainfully commenting that the entrance was open. The hero complains about the stiffness of the high-tech metal door and wonders why they don't lubricate the doors. The beautiful and dangerous mafia executive Nan Hyang greets him with irony and asks if he liked the reception there. The hero mocks the drink and announces that he brought a special remedy as a way of thanking her for her hospitality. The beautiful woman in red robes says she has prepared a gift for the great hero in the form of a lovely melody. The boy clenches his fist mockingly and suggests that she choose her favorite song since it's the last one she'll ever sing. The woman senses his martial artist aura and decides to perform the feat of her life against the young man. She takes a subtle step with her red shoes and announces the name of her death song to her opponent. Suddenly, the executive makes an extremely quick movement, striking the hero from behind with a slash. The A-level assassin proudly displays her dagger, revealing that the name of the death melody is Funeral March. She mocks the boy, saying he's just a weak rookie for not being able to dodge such a simple attack. The mafia executive orders him to stay still because he avoided hitting her vital points. But suddenly she is startled. Jin-gwon turns around, showing a bag of crushed pomegranate juice, and comments that her palate is very picky. The woman stares at her dagger, stained with red juice, and is shocked to realize she has been tricked by the young man. She gives a sly smile, praising his intelligence, and decides that she will use her true power in the fight. The classy thief activates her special dance ability, creating several fast clones around the boy. The executive mocks her speed, asserting that a mere martial artist will never be able to keep up with her. The protagonist finds that fast dance very confusing and tries to understand the meaning of all that movement. Suddenly, the young hero realizes that her steps are in perfect sync with his own movements. The boy delivers a devastating slap that hits the executive squarely in the cheek, throwing her far away. The violent impact of the punch causes a huge explosion of smoke and dust to rise throughout the large hall of the pavilion. The hero breathes a sigh of relief, commenting that keeping up with today's trends is an extremely difficult task. The executive spits blood, fallen on the wooden floor, shocked to realize she lost consciousness for a few seconds. Jin-gwon slaps his forehead, remembering that he forgot to ask where she hid the key to open the secret portal. The woman stands up furiously, accusing the boy of cowardice for having delivered a brutal punch directly to a lady's face. She gives a cynical, sideways smile and pulls out her fearsome black leather whip, ready to start the second round. The villainess promises to fight seriously this time, and the hero mocks her, asking if she hadn't same thing right at the beginning. The A-level assassin delivers an extremely fast strike with her whip, slicing through the air at immense speed. The boy dodges the blow nimbly, but is confused by the strange trajectory of the whip's attack. The beautiful woman begins to twirl her whip through the air, creating a continuous barrier of magical energy around the boy. The protagonist smiles slightly, commenting that all that noisy spectacle is nothing more than a huge waste of time. The long-haired villainess asks if he really thinks an attack needs to cause physical damage to be dangerous. Suddenly the hero freezes as he feels his chest pounding violently from the proximity of the magical energy. The mafia executive asks with a smile how he's feeling, noticing his heart racing uncontrollably during the fight. She explains that her special magical charm attribute makes anyone who touches her energy turn into her slave. The villainess proudly states that the charm of a class con artist is 100 times more powerful and destructive than any love potion. She unleashes an insane sequence of whippings, sending the boy completely drowning in her terrible love magic. The boy realizes that this magical energy of seduction is invading and dominating his entire body through the whip. The woman's irrational behavior makes Jin-gwon laugh loudly, ordering the nameless wanderer to crawl submissively to her. Under the effect of the terrible illusion, the hero begins to see the villainess as the most beautiful and sweet woman in the entire real world. Jin-gwon blushes and looks like a lovesick fool as he praises the woman's extreme beauty, unable to fight back. The villainess celebrates, saying that he is no different from any other man and praises his resilience for enduring so much. The boy tries to regain consciousness by biting his lips, but feels that the effect of the magic is reaching its limit. The executive explains that she ordered the young Gisang to lie in order to lure him there, and mocks her immense stupidity for falling for it. She promises to spare the hero's life, but warns that all of her precious guildmates are already dead. The villain reveals that her partner is a terrifying monster that even she herself would have extreme difficulty facing directly. She gives a hysterical laugh, saying that she will allow the young man to say goodbye while looking at the corpses of his friends. The assassin promises to let him crawl between her legs if he can withstand 100 brutal lashes to the body. She advances, delivering violent whippings against the hero, who remains paralyzed and defenseless in her presence. The woman delivers the final blow, crossing the hero's chest with the whip, celebrating the definitive end of that great fight. The mafia executive is breathing heavily after expending an immense amount of energy on the whippings. She gives a victorious smile, declaring that from that moment on, the nameless wanderer became her new slave. But suddenly her eyes widen in complete shock as she realizes something unbelievable is happening right in front of her. The A-level assassin wonders, confused, why she can still hear the sound of the whips echoing through the room. Jin-gwon emerges from the smoke, his voice distorted, commenting that the elder's sayings were correct. He tries to speak with his extremely swollen cheek, reminding everyone that every beautiful rose always has sharp thorns. The woman panics when she realizes that the hero hit his own cheek to break the charm spell. Before she could retreat, the hero grabs her whip with his bare hands, demonstrating absurd physical strength. The villainess desperately asks what he intends to do and fearfully begs him not to slap her face again. The hero says in a distorted voice that his greatest life motto is to always return any favor or revenge twofold in battle. The scene changes, showing the silent exterior of the luxurious pavilion, where the terrible battle finally ended at night. Back in the present, Jin-gwon jokingly confirms to Mun that his previous fight was indeed incredible. The hero sends the apothecary to treat the wounds and says he knows the perfect remedy to calm biting puppies. Seon-woo Tan stares at the boy with extreme suspicion, impressed that he approached without making a sound. The A-level hunter realizes that the boy is the famous wanderer and finds it strange that his colleague failed to capture him at the base. He looks at the protagonist's swollen cheek and comments, laughing that the legendary nameless wanderer is a disappointment. The elite hunter warns that he has no interest in the remains of other fights and promises to spare his life if he surrenders. The hero scoffs at the threat and tells the villain to shut up, complaining about his unbearable bad breath every time he speaks. Mun-do explains in his thoughts that the elite hunter possesses the attribute of a beast and that his strength reflects his desires. He compares his rival to a noisy Chihuahua, and Jin-gwon agrees, laughing, that the Chihuahua nickname suits the villain. The A-level hunter turns red with rage and angrily warns that he will devour and swallow both opponents at once. The apothecary whispers fearfully that the villain's words were rude, and the hero simply stares at him with complete composure. The terrible villain ignores his boss's orders and activates his special ability, unleashing the explosive force of a beast. He advances roaring terrifyingly and vows to tear the hero to pieces until no trace of his body remains. The apothecary screams in terror as he witnesses the insane sequence, rapid blows the villain unleashes against the protagonist. He fears for his master's life as he perceives the devastating force of the sharp claws that violently cut through the air. The young hero just gives a wry smile, commenting that a good beating is the best remedy for rabid dogs. The villain roars like a true wild animal, unleashing all his fury against the boy, who easily dodges. Jin-gwon moves quickly and thinks that it doesn't matter if the villain's nature is that of a beast, or if he just drank too much last night. He jumps up and says that if the opponent has a human face, he should at least have the decency to feel ashamed of his crimes. The hero clenches his fist with extreme determination, accumulating an absurd amount of brilliant energy for the attack. The protagonist delivers a devastating punch directly to the top of the head of the fearsome A-level elite hunter. The boy's powerful blow creates a giant beam of light that slams the villain into the ground, destroying the entire surrounding area. The night shines brightly over the beautiful traditional city where the luxurious pavilion is located under the moonlight. Suddenly, a catastrophic roar echoes throughout the region, indicating that major destruction has occurred at the site. The pavilion completely collapses in gigantic flames while the apothecary and the old man watch the disaster from afar. The experienced old man comments with relief that thankfully they manage to get everyone out of the building in time. Alice stares at the fire in fear and whispers the protagonist's name, worried about the young man's well-being amidst the chaos. The young woman with blue hair starts running desperately through the smoke and wreckage, calling out for the boy in tears. She stops abruptly upon seeing a familiar silhouette calmly emerging from all that black smoke. The hero runs towards her, and the young woman joyfully celebrates, seeing that he managed to escape that terrible fire. She desperately warns that the apothecary is in real danger of death, but the young man replies with a swollen cheek. The boy runs past her and says he already knows about the situation, leaving the girl completely confused in the hallway. The young woman looks at her own hand and realizes that the boy left a mysterious note with her without her noticing anything. She reads the message quickly and is surprised to see that he ordered everyone to be evacuated from the pavilion as quickly as possible. The note warns that the place will become very dangerous, and she wonders what the boy plans to do against the mafia. The protagonist silently observes the ruins of the pavilion under the heavy rain that begins to fall from the dark sky. The boy rubs his cheek, happily commenting that the swelling has finally gone away thanks to the excellent wrestling exercise. We see the once powerful A-tier hunter lying completely defeated, face down on the ground amidst the wreckage. The hero gently pats him on the head, telling the fool to wake up because there's no point in sleeping after taking just one punch. The villain wakes up startled, spitting blood, and the boy comments, laughing, that the opponent is much tougher than he seemed. Wounded apothecary watches the scene in silence, shocked by how easily the current master resolved that great danger. He thought he knew the master was strong, but realizes that defeating a class of fighter with a single punch surpasses all limits. The gray-haired boy freezes as he remembers calling the powerful monster a son of a bitch just minutes ago. He begins to desperately apologize on his knees, claiming that he had no real intention of offending his beloved lord. To his surprise, the young protagonist turns around with a sweet, knowing smile and says that the apothecary did very well. He praises his courage, explaining that thanks to his effort in holding back the villain, young Alice was able to escape. The hero places his hand on his shoulder, thanking him sincerely for the apothecary's excellent work on that difficult night. Man-du cries with emotion upon receiving sincere praise from his master and gazes at him with a look full of respect and affection. He finds it strange that the master calls him by his real name instead of his drug addict nickname, but he disguises it and asks about the prisoner. The apothecary points to the wounded villain on the floor and asks seriously what they should do with that damned man. Jin-gwon steps on the defeated hunter's back and announces with a firm look that they have finally captured the hunting dog. He says that now is the big moment to find out who the real owner is, who is holding the leash of this animal. The heavy rain continues to fall beneath the dark clouds that cover the entire sky above that mysterious mountain in the region. The villain reminisces about the past, recounting that he was the son of a hunter and that the forest was always his only home and school. He explains that he learned to hunt animals at a very young age and that wildlife taught him everything he needed to know. The man reveals that the law of the forest has always been simple: the weak lose everything, and the strong inherit all the land. The villain with the badly bruised face says he has always lived by this rule and accepts that the boy was the strongest today. The hero listens silently in the rain, while the apothecary complains that the villain is still delirious. The apothecary slaps him on the head, telling the criminal to shut up and get straight to the important part. The apothecary kicks the villain in the head, demanding to know immediately where his big boss is hiding in the city. Mun-do slaps the prisoner again, who complains about his level, and the hero simply focuses his attention on the conversation. Under the heavy rain of the night, we see several workers clearing the wood and debris from the destroyed pavilion. San-Wu-tan kneels in front of the group of heroes, surrounded by extremely serious and focused gazes. The A-level hunter confesses with a dejected look that he was the one who actually founded that mafia organization. Alice is surprised, and the prisoner explains that at first the gang only served to smuggle monster skins. We see a flashback of when the villain ended up falling completely defeated on the wet ground after a tough battle. The claw hunter recounts that a much stronger masked warrior emerged and took over his entire mafia by brute force. The protagonist stares intently at the prisoner and asks directly what the true identity of this boss is. San-Wu-tan stammers and tries to reveal the leader's name, but suddenly stops speaking upon sensing a sinister presence. A mysterious hooded figure emerges from the rain, mockingly commenting that there's no need to say their name. The dreaded boss Jin-gwon appears carrying the executive's body and warns that beasts should never be raised. The prisoner trembles with terror upon hearing the cold words of his former boss, who accuses him of being a great ingrate. Jin-gwon drops the lifeless body of Executive Nan hanging onto the wet ground, leaving the heroes in complete silence. Jin-gwon stares at the dead executive and asks very directly if he was the one who murdered his own ally right there. Masked man coldly replies, head held high, that things that lose their usefulness should simply be discarded. The protagonist stares at him seriously and asks if he is indeed the Grand Master who commands that entire mafia. The mysterious masked warrior greets the boy, calling him by his famous code name, the Nameless Wanderer in the Rain. He praises the boy's fighting skills, highlighting that he is very different from other weak martial artists. The leader warns that the boy would be of great use to the gang if he hadn't bared his teeth at them. The villain throws the young woman's body aside with utter contempt, showing no remorse whatsoever. The mafia boss draws his gleaming sword and mockingly announces that the boy's tragic fate has already been decided. He points the blade, ordering the hero to pay with his life for having thwarted the Blood Alliance's plans. The experienced old man recognizes the symbol on the sword and panics when he realizes the Traitors Guild is involved. The mafia leader asks, laughing, if the old man really thinks the powerful Blood Alliance fears a hunter's war. He guarantees that anyone who gets in their way will be annihilated without hesitation on the orders of the Grand Master. Mun-do observes the air around him and realizes with horror that the mist is actually vapor generated by the villain's absurd heat. The masked warrior is revealed to be the dangerous A-level calamity flame swordsman Jin-gwon. Jin-gwon walks disdainfully, repeating the villain's cruel phrases and clenching his fist in an extremely serious manner. He leaps very quickly towards his opponent, signaling that he has finally understood that they should not exist. The protagonist prepares a devastating punch, announcing that he will destroy the entire gang with his hammer fist. The swordsman of flames swings his blazing sword, activating his dangerous flame of calamity technique. A gigantic explosion of pure red fire consumes the entire area, creating a huge wall of heat in the rain. Du and the old man recoil in panic, commenting that the heat from the fire is so intense that it's difficult to even breathe there. The two powerful adversaries exchange brutal blows amidst the fire, creating several explosions of magical energy. The impact of the attacks causes the scenery to tremble completely and scatters bright sparks of fire throughout the region. The AE-level villain admits that he now understands the reason for so much confidence on the part of the young martial artist. The warrior in dark robes warns with his head held high that there will always be a rigid hierarchy of power in the world. He activates his judgment of calamity flames, strike to try, and put a definitive end to the young opponent. The swordsman vows to show the boy that there are mountains of power he will never be able to overcome in his life. But incredibly, the hero's punch goes through the entire barrier of flames and hits the villain squarely in the face. The fearsome mafia boss is thrown far away by the strong impact of the blow and travels very quickly through the air. It falls with extreme violence, destroying the stone floor and raising a gigantic cloud of dust and debris. Pieces of stone and wood fly everywhere after the violent impact of the hero's overwhelming counterattack. The villain on his knees is completely stunned, unable to understand how he lost sight of his opponent for a millisecond. Jin-gwon calmly approaches, commenting mockingly that most of that idle chatter only served to get him beaten up. The swordsman rises, grinding his teeth with hatred, and swears, standing up, that he will teach the young hero an unforgettable lesson. The protagonist points his fingers mockingly, subtly hinting that being a martial artist doesn't mean being on the same level